It's shared. Should really change this to read this book, not just buy it, but read this book. I'm gonna make a new one. Okay. Greetings, everyone. Welcome to CRWS. Today is April 30th, 2023. And the pleasant tunes you were listening to were from Super Black Records. Like, shout out to Super Black Records for allowing us to use their music during our broadcast. So let me get this on this other screen, and yeah, everyone for sure go check out Super Black Records. You'll find a ton of pleasant music, a ton of amazing pleasant music. Okay, so this broadcast is meant to share our experiences on joining the science, the business, and the effort to practice counter racism, which is designed and intended to produce a system of justice. System of justice meaning guaranteeing no one is allowed to be mistreated, and then people who need help the most receive constructive help. Everyone should definitely go to producejustice.com and secure your copy of Neely Fuller Jr.'s code book, the word guide, and begin to attempt to practice counter racism. So getting started, when I joined this business, I was a person who had a number of so-called friends. Now the code book teaches and suggests that non-white people do not have friends, and it also teaches that a lot of our time and energy is spent being very serious about silly things and silly about serious things. So before I joined this business, I thought I was a person who had a bunch of friends, and I thought that because whenever I wanted to like do something like throw a party or consume drugs, I always had like a bunch of people to invite, or I would be invited to a bunch of events where a bunch of people were having fun. But when I joined this business and I tried to get those so-called friends to join this business with me, because I realized that I was because I have been classified as black, my whole existence has been sabotaged, and I have been in all areas of people activity. I have been made very, very pitiful because I am not able to do what a person on this planet should be able to do, which is to exist in peace, to maintain in peace, to live in peace. When I wanted to solve that problem, when I wanted to dedicate my existence to helping the people and the creatures of this planet remove the system of white supremacy, all those so-called friends disappeared because for some reason, not for some reason, the system of white supremacy has instilled a high level of confusion and fear within the minds of people who are being dominated by the system, who are victims of the system. That is us, non-white people. Anyone non-white is potentially likely experiencing high levels of confusion and fear. Subconsciously or consciously, we have been taught to don't challenge the system, don't question it. For sure, don't try to counter it and produce a system of justice guaranteeing no one is being harmed anymore and everyone's getting the help that they need. Certainly do not do that. So during this business, it has removed a lot of non-constructive, silly people from my existence, and it has taught me to be very focused on attempting to solve my problems and just to use the truth to my benefit. And it also teaches codification, you know, what you should say, what you should not say, how to minimize conflict. It's also taught me that I used to be a person where conflict, it didn't really bother me, but I had a number of conflict um, with my with a number of people in my life, in my existence, and with this business, conflict does not really help to solve problems. Conflict resolution can solve some problems. So joining this business, it has really, really changed my entire life for the better. I have never been more happy, more joyful, more positive, more understanding that, wow, we don't have to be this deranged and this lame. We don't have to be this silly or stupid. We can really attempt to solve the problem of white supremacy by just simply using the truth. And I thought I've always valued the truth, but the system is so powerful that it can teach a person that the problem is not white people who are dedicated to the system of white supremacy, the ones who are the ones who we call white supremacists, racists. It can teach you that the problem is reptilians. The problem is, black people going out and killing black people when we've been taught to do that by the system from birth. We are taught to disregard the life of black people, in particular non-white people worldwide. So when I joined this business, a huge level of confusion was removed from me because this business teaches us to what? Follow logic, follow logic. And if anyone follows the logic, they can trace down, they can track that the greatest killers and spreaders of violence and deception are people who call themselves white. These people have a long track record of consuming non-white people, raping non-white people, and just using non-white people for whatever purposes that they want, but certainly not to help us, and certainly not to create a peaceful planet, which we all should be interested in, and we should all logically want to live in peace. But it's just so happened that a small number of people who have taught us to call ourselves the minority when they are in fact the minority, probably less than 10% of the population of people on this planet are white. But here we are experiencing high levels of confusion and deception and violence. So we think we're the minority when we outnumber them probably 100 to 1, 100,000 to 1, possibly. But because they're aware of that, they are such a small number, this system has to be very powerful and very violent. And it has to have us confused and focus on just being silly and not interested in solving our problems. And all of our problems can be solved with the system of white supremacy being replaced with the system of justice. So prior to joining this business, I my so-called career, I didn't really even have that planned out too well. I was just really just going with the flow. I was making enough money to get by and I didn't really care about money, didn't really understand money all too well either. But joining this business, it has it teaches us to evolve, learn. We should all be still learning. So when you have that mindset, what am I going to learn of constructive value? What do I want to experience of constructive value? So this business has allowed me to partake on a career path that I find to be very fascinating and very constructive. And and that's just a tiny bit of how how this business of and this science of counter racism has impacted me. I no longer am confused about all the nonsense and stupid things I hear, nor does it anger me. I can simply observe and ask questions and maybe drop some counter racist logic into the conversation if I feel that person may be receptive to it. So I am in a business where it's mostly going to be white people. It's mostly going to be people who seemingly have no interest in ending racism. And there's going to be some non white people as well, of course, who also probably are going to be confused about the system of white supremacy, what it is, and how it works. But because I'm aware of that, I can practice codification using my thought, speech, and behavior to minimize potential conflict and to continue on this career path without people knowing I know what I know about the system. Because unfortunately, when you speak directly about the the race problem meaning the race war being waged against us, known as racism, white supremacy, that can get you in a lot of trouble on the in the workplace, and that can very much ostracize you and isolate you, which happened to me when I attempted to get my so-called friends to help me to produce justice just by reading some books. Let's read the ISIS papers. Let's read Urugu. Let's read The Delectable Negro. Let's read the United Independent Compensatory Code System concept. That I lost all my friends in less than a week by trying to get them to become a little serious about understanding what's happening on this planet. And I'm gonna pause there and let others share their experiences before I just go on forever and ever. So I'm gonna pause, and whoever wants to chime in, please do so.
I be heard.
Yes, sir.
Peaceful greetings to the listeners and to everyone on the panel. The 05, can you give me a question? Can you repeat the question? How has counter racism? Can you repeat the question, please?
So we're just simply just discussing the constructive value of counter racism.
Okay, I'll share my views. I'd like to give some background and some context as to how I ended up. Uh, I have probably been aware of counter racism, specifically counter racism science, the code book, for about maybe a little bit over 2 years. I first found out about it during the so-called global pandemic. Uh, I sometime before that, I found myself incredibly frustrated and extremely confused about what was going on the planet, what was happening to me, what was happening to the people that were close to me or in close proximity to myself. The lack of urgency, or I guess lack of maybe even a plan on what to do about this problem. I was unable to verbalize what that problem was at the time. I slowly but surely identified it as racism. I was kind of all over the place watching different videos, watching different people speak, uh, such such as Dr. Umar Johnson. I think he will from time to time mention racism, white supremacy. I watched a lot of so-called Breakfast Club, and as now that's not entirely constructive. I don't consume that information anymore, that platform. But it really got to became a real problem for me when I was with my so-called associates at the time. Um, I didn't have too many black people, a lot of non-white people, non-black people, a couple of white people, and maybe one or two other black people. But it became a real problem when it seemed like the shootings, the unarmed shootings, murders of black people was occurring. I wasn't really, I'll say I wasn't aware of it, but when I started to notice it and started to see that it seemed to be happening more and more frequently, that it couldn't have been a coincidence. And the response I was receiving from those associates, the people in close proximity to myself, so attempted family members, I wasn't satisfied with it, and I was extremely confused about it. I remember during some protests, because those became frequent. That has been a frequent occurrence for quite some time. I think for a while, but I'll just from 2016 onwards, I'll say that's when I started to notice it. But people were burning flags, not black people, not white people were burning flags, and the so-called associates that I had were more upset about flags being burnt than the loss of life, than black people being shot, gunned down by police who were unarmed. So it was very confusing and very frustrating for myself. So I decided one day I was gonna start reading, and not only reading but reading, trying to read constructive information about racism. So I began reading. I remember the first two books that I picked up were The Miseducation of the Negro. The author's name, I'm forgetting the author's name, but I'm sure everyone knows. Carter G. Woodson. And I want to say it was a book of speeches by Malcolm X. So those are the first two books I picked up. I was also watching lectures, started watching a lot of lectures uh, by various black people. At this point in time, I would say this was maybe 2019. At this point in time, I still hadn't ran into the ISIS papers or Dr. Cress Welsing or Neely Fuller. But not too long after that, I ran into a couple of people on this panel who were also seemed to be seeking answers about the current problem or the current issue on the planet, seeking clarity. And for me, that's what counter racism, the code book, has provided me with, was much needed clarity to understand what is going on the planet, what is happening to me, the system that I find myself under. It has allowed me to develop the thought, speech, and action to express and also counter the the issues or the problems that I continue to face. Ultimately, that is what counter racism has provided for me. Uh, the ISIS papers, the code book, Urugu, those three books have tremendously informed me, and those are great resources I continue to utilize today, and I expect I'll never forget. That's all I have at this moment in time. So I'll go ahead and mute my mic. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to chime in? While folks are gathering their thoughts, and I'm sure we're gonna hear from everyone on the panel um, in due time. So, what this um, counter codified language, counter racist language, has given me the closest thing to the fountain of youth that can be found on the planet. I believe that many of us, most of us, we use racist logic, which is why people say they have a dark sense of humor, which is why you hear people say that's dark when they're referring to something incorrect, which is why you see white people um, broadcasting the news saying, well, it was a dark day, or these are dark times, or dark times are ahead. You know, if you really pay attention to how this planet has been arranged by a racist man and racist woman, you will see that anything dark is referred to as something that's incorrect, something that shouldn't be, something that needs to be contained or removed. Neely Fuller Jr. has a word guide, and one of those he has a definition for the word ode. So I believe that I will never so-called grow old because the counter racist definition, the compensatory definition Neely Fuller Jr. has created is a person who doesn't use the truth to attempt to eliminate the system of white supremacy and to produce justice. That is what a old person is. Neely Fuller Jr. is about 93, maybe going on 94. I may be in error, but he's not old. He's far from old. He's very useful in trying to solve this problem. And just so I'm not giving out the incorrect definition, I'm going to read from the word guide really quick. I'm going to read that definition of ode because no person who is truly dedicated to solving this problem is owed. Now, the non-white people who are focused on simply being cute, focus on jumping up and down while a bunch of noise is being played, those people are quite old from my observations. So let's get that definition read quickly. Dun, dun. Yeah, I and joining this business, my mind has never been this um motivated to just accomplish my goals because this business is all about solving problems and doing things that need doing. And we need to have goals, we need to have things we want to achieve despite being captured by the most wretched system to ever come into existence, the system of white supremacy. So it allows us to, and it motivates us to, hey, yes, you are a prisoner of war. Yes, in the area of economics, education, entertainment, labor, law, politics, religion, sex, and war, you are being severely mistreated and terrorized. But despite that, we must do what needs doing, solve this problem while also maintaining in this system without going totally insane to the point where you just succumb to what the racists want you to do, where you just obey and you make no effort to resist. People often think that fighting racism or countering racism, you have to go out and protest or you have to go out and get together and harm white people. But that's not what this business is all about. Simply using your thoughts to say, to think, we should solve racism. And I'm gonna stop thinking that things that are dark are incorrect. I'm gonna stop doing those things. That is a form of counter countering this problem. And simply imagine if an affected number of non-white people simply thought, white people, they don't seem to be dedicated to helping us to create a peaceful planet, and the power balance is really, really incorrect. They are super duper powerful, and we have been made powerless because of their system and their actions that they do to keep this system going. So, no more sex with them. No more sex with white people. They're not our friends. They're not our brothers or sisters. They are either white supremacists or they are complacent in this system. So no more sex with them until we have a system of justice. Now imagine if an affected number of non-white people were attempting to do these things with their minds and their speech and their action, then we would see the system retard itself probably overnight. So still haven't found it. Gonna find it right now. Gonna use this silence to think about the things that have been said.
Um, let me speak for you.
Wait, let me read this.
Oh, okay, sorry. Go ahead.
No, you're okay. Um, so old person. This is on page 271 of the United Independent Compensatory Code System Concept, a compensatory counter racist codified word guide. Everyone attempt to go to producejustice.com, buy your book, study it. So, old person, racial, use this term to apply to the following conditions: any person who loses the will to think, speak, and or act to find truth and use truth to produce justice and correctness. And two, any person who loses the will to think, speak, and or act to eliminate racism, white supremacy. Study the ways that others use the term old person. So, if you want your fountain of youth, this concept that white people have wrote about for hundreds of years, study counter racist logic and apply it to your existence. I can almost guarantee that it will improve your existence. It should motivate you to want to do things that you've never thought about doing, to improve your body, improve your mind, eliminate the people in your existence that when you go around them, it's just conflict, gossip, stupid talk, silly activities being done. Spending your money on a ton of nonsense instead of, you know, saving your money to do something of constructive value. So I think Miss Ash or Lil Z wanted to chime in, so I'm gonna go ahead and mute. And after they're done speaking, I'm not gonna start speaking again. I'm gonna expect someone else from the panel to go ahead and share something of constructive value that they've garnered from this business.
Okay. For me, I guess learning about counter racism has been very, very helpful, especially when it comes to being better at expressing and understanding the system and my position in the system and being able to just speak clearly and being able to, I guess, like use the correct words because I think in a lot of ways I was very confused and repeating the things that I heard and not actually using logic. And now it's a lot easier to function because I can use logic, but it can also be very alienating. Yeah, because it's I do I'm able to have a lot of conversations with people, and I can observe and understand how the system affects the way that they're thinking and speaking and their actions. And then I can be around suspected racists and be able to at least have a better understanding of how they use language to cause confusion. Um, but it does make it so it makes it like difficult at times because I feel like I'm constantly thinking, interpreting, trying to understand everything that comes that like I hear or experience, and it's very difficult sometimes to talk to the victims, but it's something that I'm learning to do and getting better at being patient with because there's just a lot of incorrect things that I hear and see, especially like lately I've been seeing a lot of victims mistreating their offspring, specifically female victims mistreating their offspring, and trying to come up with like a codified way to help the these victims see that hey, this this child is an extension of you, or it should be at least in a system of justice. Right now, you don't really have any like ownership of that child, but physically, it's an extension of you. And when you're abusing that child, like you're also abusing yourself and your ancestors and the future offspring that that child will have. Um, and I think that in the past, before understanding like the code, I probably would have approached the conversation with a lot more like judgment and probably not even, it wouldn't have been to solve the problem. It would have been to gossip, to name call them, and to act as if I was superior to them. But I think one thing that has really helped me with like reading the code is being much more solution oriented and trying to solve problems in my existence and other people's existence, and being able to ask questions, but especially solving problems because I think a lot of times victims have conflict with each other because they're not in the mindset of solving the problem or even their minor problems because it's too scary to solve that problem or to try to come up with solutions to solve a problem. Um, so those are like the things that I can think of at the current moment. I think Z wanted to say something.
I think that now that I know about racism, I think when Black people say confused things, I don't get upset or irritated because I understand why they're confused.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that, oh, I think, well, we made a list of things that Z probably may have been doing if she didn't understand counter racism and if she didn't have like people in her existence who understand counter racism. And the list was getting into fights with other victims, jumping people, watching TikTok, giving non-Black people the hard R pass, wearing crop tops, and yeah, being upset with Black people when they say like confused things. That's just like a short list that we were thinking of while we were talking, but I think that if you do talk to counter racism with your offspring, you should really emphasize that their brain is really growing and developing, and the information may be like overwhelming, but there are conscious and subconscious decisions that they're making because they're learning this information.
Can someone go into the can someone go into the chat and read what I wrote because I don't want to sound all scruffy on the broadcast more than I have to.
10-4, I'll do that.
Oh, okay. I was gonna do it. I'll do it. Can I be heard?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Irie says, gratitude to the ancestors for the code and guiding my path towards it. Now I am able to correctly teach or give non-white information about themselves
10-4, I'll
and
do
about
that.
the system. Creator of all, allowing they'll become less confused. Codification, my fault. Yeah. Codification is also a part of my eating habits and fitness. I am sure I will not become old because I am serious about maintenance of great health in defiance of racism, white supremacy. I guess I'll go. Um, man, I'm trying to think. When did I like started to like question my like surroundings? Um,
Marcel, can you get a
I
little
think
closer to your phone,
yeah, yeah,
please?
got you, no problem. Yeah, when I started to question what I used to call like America, um, yeah, this had to be like in high school. So at that time, I listened to a lot of white people, um, watched DVDs. Like I knew of like Quaker referenced Dr. Umar. Like I remember watching those DVDs, Professor Griff, to where they would break down like symbols and stuff. So I had knowledge of that. It's just again I still didn't um, get the actual term to correctly define what I'm watching, which is counter racism or like learning those symbols as um, sort of white people using code to confuse me. So at that time, I listened to a lot of like Alex Jones, also black people too, like the 5150 show when it was on Sirius XM, Zoe Williams, uh, like those programs had some constructive stuff with it, and then it didn't. Um, I think when I watched like Zoe Williams, he would talk about using words correctly. It just I don't think he knew of Neely Fuller, but he used to always break down the etymology of certain terms and if it's being used correctly. Um, once the pandemic hit, I knew of the cows. It's just I never pressed the video to listen to the cows through YouTube. I think once I started to get serious about the problem, it was when I was watching television and not understanding what was what I was looking at on the actual TV screen. So I think the television show Breaking Bad kind of did that for me. And when I heard Gus's program on that, it made me just step back and think of, okay, what am I looking at? How can I talk about it without um, sounding crazy? But yeah, I think my introduction to counter racism helped me read more books, how to watch the news correctly. Um, Even when I sometimes dwell into watch sports, I'm always listening to what uh, people are saying about what's happening. Uh, is it does it sound like they're belittling a black person? um, but yeah, would say area 3 kind of helped me get more serious about uh, slowing down the actual conversation, um, stopping, asking questions, uh, um, words. So yeah, it just made me ask questions to where I'm not trying to cut somebody off to get my point across to them when they're trying to say something to uh, combat some sort of argument that me and this individual are having. So yeah, codification is definitely a must for any person that's non-white and trying to be less confused. So I mute there.
Thank you to everyone who has shared so far. Go ahead, Miss Action.
Yes. How has counter racist codification helped me? It has helped me see things as they are. I feel like I'm not well confused. Everything before seemed kind of hazy. Things seemed there seemed to be a lot of contradictions. Um, we always hear, oh, racism is over. It's been over since the civil rights movement, blah, blah, blah. But growing up, noticing I treat white people the way they treated me. So if they were rude to me, I'd be rude back. And then it's a problem. Then, oh, some big fuss about it, blah, blah, blah. Let me call your manager. And I've noticed this with other black people. When we treat white people the way they treat us, it's a problem. I didn't understand why that was. Um, just going through information, listening to old videos, old Donahue episodes where they had Minister Farrakhan, all through the 80s, Dr. Welsing and other guests, and then eventually coming on to Mr. Fuller's program when it was on Talktainment and listening to the shows live, things started to make sense. And even still, I'm still learning what codification is and how to uh, and what works, what doesn't work. But the things make sense now. This this system is not made for me. I'm not supposed to rely on other black people to think like I think. It is not my job to preach at other non-white people. It is my job to get myself into position to produce justice, to compensate for what's missing. The other non-white people have to come on that on their own, and I can be there to help them if they want my help. I don't have to push anything on them. I don't have to do all the showing off. Oh, I got this much education that white people gave me. I don't have to do any of that. I don't have to copy what I see other people doing because there's a reason that non-white people are given the programming that they're given. It's so white people can stay in power. It's so white people can ensure their genetic survival. Okay, that's fine. But why didn't you produce justice? Because they don't want to produce justice. So what am I going to do? I have time and I have energy now. How can I use that time and energy to do the most constructive thing possible? And the code has helped me do that. I don't have to argue with anybody. I don't have to be shocked when certain things happen. Can I solve the problem? If I can't solve the problem, who can solve the problem? How do I speak to this person? It's all about asking questions, being logical, balancing your emotions. I don't have to get upset anymore. I understand what's going on. I don't even have to understand what's going on. I know the whole gist of it. We're in a system of racism, white supremacy. Expect to be mistreated, and it's just you. It's nice to have people that agree with some of the things that you see, but you don't need that. We need the effective number of people to independently do whatever they need to do to produce justice. What works for me does not work for everybody else. And stuff makes sense now. I don't have to I don't have to come together with anybody. It's just eye-opening. Everything is clear now. I feel like I wish I had learned about this sooner, but better late than never. So that's pretty much all I have to say right now.
Thank you, Miss Constructive Action. And a lot of what has been said from the fellow victims of racism, fellow prisoners of war, and fellow um, attempted counter-racist scientists is that especially what Irie said about how qualification has allowed her to want to allow her to improve her health and the things that she puts in her body, and that has it has also done that for me as well. It has given me more of a reason to work out at least 5 to 6 days a week, and it has allowed me to understand that like sometimes I will put things in my body, food stuff in my body that I know is poison, but I at least have the awareness that hey, this is poison. This is not actually food, which should have nutrients to improve your body. So I at least have the awareness that when I'm consuming something incorrect, I know it's incorrect. But it has also allowed me to eliminate a lot of the junk and poison I was putting into my body. And a huge thing this business has done for me is allowed me to connect with the creator, because very when I was very young, I can understand that this God concept, this Jesus concept, I can understand that when I was a child that this is not helping us. It actually makes us look pretty extra pathetic when we are on our knees praying to God or Jesus. I find it very silly. But what the code introduces, Neely Fuller Jr. introduces, is the creator. The creator is responsible for existence, and I have been able to connect to the creator, speak with the creator, and retrieve, receive guidance and assistance. So when I am writing for assistance, my message is not getting lost in translation because I am not on the confused path of giving my energy and my thoughts to a concept given to me by people who call me their enemy. God and the concept of Jesus and God, we mostly understand that from the perspective of a white supremacist, a person who wants to keep us their slaves till infinity and beyond. So, what is happening when we are on our knees asking God and Jesus for help? According to logic, it's not going to be communicated, and we're not going to receive the things we're begging and asking God or Jesus for. So, because of that, I was very, before the code, I was very apathetic to spirituality and very apathetic to connecting with the universe. And but now that I am attempting to be a counter-racist soldier, counter-racist scientist, a person attempting to solve the race problem, I now know I have some assistance in this universe in the form of the creator. And I think that's very profound and very necessary, because non-white people are said to be a very spiritual people, which is why the churches and all that stuff was so effective in neutralizing us and making us very docile, because the racists understand us way more than we understand ourselves, especially if we're not working to understand ourselves. They understand that we need to feel connected to something. So they give us religion, they give us all this nonsense that we take it and run with it. But I am certain when an affected number of non white people start asking the creator for help in solving this problem, it will be solved. Another important thing, and I would say enjoyable thing about the code and this business is that ask questions. Like asking questions is something that we are not taught to do. Actually, it's so bad in our collective that um, asking a question when you're a child, you can sometimes get in trouble. Like, who do you think you are asking me that question, boy, girl? You don't talk to me like that. You can ask a question and it can be misconstrued as you are insulting your so-called mother or so-called father. But we're supposed to ask questions. We're supposed to question everything. So being in this business, I know how to ask questions. Ask questions about things I need questions asked about, whether I'm on campus or in the workplace or just having a conversation with anyone. Ask questions. The white people have mastered that. They know how to ask questions and gather information and make observations based on the questions being asked and answered. And that is something that I greatly appreciate learning to do from this business. It's interesting that it took joining this business to understand the value of asking questions and questioning things. But that is how we get problem solved through questions and answers, as Neely Fuller Jr. always says. And I think that's very correct, logical, and true that we should be asking questions because that's how problems get solved. And that is probably why racist men and racist women have done such an excellent job at neutering that aspect of us to where we don't want to ask questions. We don't know how to ask questions, and if yeah, that is very significant and probably one of the most important aspects about this business is that we are taught to question things, question everything, because when you begin to understand the system of white supremacy, you will begin to understand that most things is lies. You've been lied to since you came out of the womb, and that's something we should attempt to correct immediately. The lies fed into our minds, the lies we've been forced to believe through our care units, what we call our families, and we should suggest to them that they question things as well and really think about what we have been doing on this planet for thousands of years. Because why are we still in the same position where we are dominated in all areas? So asking questions is very, very enjoyable to me, and I'm sure other folks may have that same opinion. And when you're asking questions, you are probably doing some learning as well, and that's something we should never ever stop doing, ever. But again, the racists have sabotaged our minds to the point where we don't place value in learning. We place value in material things like Jordans and Gucci and expensive Fenty products and whatever um, material nonsense that's being produced and fed to us, and we go out, break our necks trying to acquire, but acquiring knowledge, acquiring the truth, that has been taken so far away from us. So I'm gonna mute there, and hopefully other folks have some things to. I know folks have other things to share, so I'm gonna mute.
Eric,
Yes, sir.
thank you. Peaceful greeting to everyone on the panel and everyone to all the listeners. Um, to answer the question, um, what constructive benefit I receive from counter racism um, is purpose. Um, People always ask the question, what's your purpose in life? Or, that's been, a basic concept in humans, mind and evolution, what's your purpose? I think that it is the purpose of all people who believe that it is most important to produce justice or balance between people. Mr. Fuller speaks of. That concept has been around for a long time, spoken in a lot of different languages and a lot of different cultures. So that concept is a viable thing to promote what is known as peace, I guess you could say, or balance between people, justice. It has personally helped me to understand the power of words, the words that I speak, and then the words that I hear, and the words that affect me in everyday existence. I was always raised on my attempted care unit to read. So once I was introduced, to certain books like the ISIS Papers, Mr. Fuller's work, the United Independent Compensatory Code concept, Yurugu was spoken about earlier, Dr. Member I Need. We have a lot of works from our elders and ancestors that have passed away, Dr. John Henry Clark, countless. And they spoke of our situation as, how we've been classified as Black people, or how we classify ourselves as Black people, correction, how we've classified ourselves as Black people, our condition on this planet for a long time of recorded history. And I always knew, something was wrong with this. I can definitely say from what other victims have said on this call about Area 7 on this religion, there's a lot of confusion with that. I feel that religion in particular to Black people has stunted our mental capacity to use logic, was spoken about earlier, and to question. Those two things are critical for the existence and the advancement of a people. Everything that we know in existence was made by asking questions and getting answers, from building houses to anything that we look at. So that is a universal concept. So if using logic is a universal concept, then that is the value that counter racism has brought to me, because it's made me to be able, for one, be patient with myself, be patient with other people, to be able to predict outcomes because you have an understanding of the system that you were born into. I do want to give a definition so that we're clear as to what we're talking about. We speak of racism, white supremacy. I want to use Dr. Frances Cress Welsing's definition, which she used her entire life to create as a theory. In my opinion, it's a theorem because it can be seen. She says that racism, white supremacy is a global system of people. I'm sorry, that is Mr. Garcia Gates. Hold on one second. Dr. Wilson said that racism, white supremacy is the local and global power system dynamic, structured and maintained by those who classify themselves as white, whether consciously or subconsciously determined. This system consists of patterns of perception, logic, symbol formation, thought, speech, action, and emotional response as conducted simultaneously in all areas of people activity: economics, education, entertainment, labor, law, politics, religion, sex, and war. The ultimate purpose of the system is to ensure white genetic survival and to prevent white genetic annihilation on Earth, a planet in which the overwhelming majority of people are classified as non-white, black, brown, red, and yellow by white-skinned people. All of the non-white people are genetically dominant in terms of skin coloration compared to the genetic recessive white-skinned people. So by using this definition, which I fully agree with, I would have to say, and also terms that Dr. Wilson spoke of, she said that it is our cosmic duty to counter the system of racism and white supremacy. I think that is the only logical purpose for me being here. Um, I'm a little bit older, so I've been through a lot of incidents of racism, white supremacy. Now that I'm able to look at them in context of of what I'm existing and dealing with. Um, Most importantly, I would say it's taught me how to be patient with myself. I'll say that again, but also being patient with other victims, whether that is, what is called family members or what is classified as friends. I would agree with the other panelists who spoke. We don't have either. We have attempted victim units or care units, and we have associates, in my opinion, because that is what we are dealt with. Um, well, that's what we are allowed to have in the system of racism, white supremacy. Um, and yeah, I'll mute that. Thank you for your time.
I wanted to quickly just comment on that because that is also one of the big things that counter racism has helped me with, because I used to blame non-white people a lot, solely focusing on them, on, well, I should say us, well, more so them, because I didn't blame myself, but much focus on non-white people's inability to solve this problem. When I was watching those other people, that type of behavior or attitude greatly influenced me, and it was because I didn't understand the system of racism, white supremacy, what it is, and how it works, and how racism is designed for me to take the focus off of white people, or the racist suspects, the white people who practice racism, and focus on non-white people and their inability to solve their problems, specifically the problem, the greatest problem of racism.
Real quick, Irie responded to Mr. Yahoo's beginning. She said, yes, a clearly defined purpose.
Yeah, and I've been jotting down things that I want to also echo, and I can still vividly remembering the powerful sensations I felt reading the preface of the ISIS papers when I read that I had a cosmic duty to help end the race war being waged against us. I felt my soul ignited and motivated to want to do this. Don't care how long it takes. It should take a couple of minutes once enough of us are dedicated to truth, logic, and solving the problem and solving our problems along with that. I have never really thought about my purpose until reading that. I was very confused. I thought things were just random. The universe was just random and things just happen randomly. But that is another thinking pattern the racists love for us to function with. Not understanding that no, everything happens for a reason and we all have a purpose. And I ask that question to some victims sometimes. Victim meaning any non-white person who has been any non-white person in existence is a victim to the system through deception, violence, and being unable to do the things they should be able to do in all areas of the people activity. That's what we say when we that's what we mean when we say victim. We are subjected to this vile system of white supremacy that has so much animosity into our psyche, and that's why we interact with one another how we do. So I ask a lot of non-white people, what do you think your purpose is? And a lot of the times, the response is, I've never been asked that before. And after that, the response is pretty tragic because it's nothing of value, what they deem their purpose to be, is not to, help everyone on the planet and to produce peace. But that is to be expected. We are in a system of white supremacy, but the more of us understand our purpose to producing our purpose is to produce justice, the more of us, the more closer we get to solving this problem. Another thing this business has alleviated in my mind is the confusion involving the word love, because I've been, so many people have said they loved me in the past, and still to this day, and those same people refuse to help me or to get serious about anything of constructive value. So love is justice and justice is peace, and none of those things currently exist. So now I understand that when a non-white person or a white person is using the word love and it's coming from a non-white person, they're just confused, and they may be trying to display a form of affection, so they use the word love, and a white person is simply just being deceptive, because how can love exist when everywhere on the planet there's such misery and chaos and destruction and the total um, valueless place on no value placed on the lives of people, the lives of creatures that also have the right to exist without being harmed, and the planet in general that is constantly being destroyed, and large areas of it becoming inhabitable. Think Chernobyl. Think of the reality of landfills. If we didn't have landfills, that land could be used constructively. But we are dominated by people who seemingly have no problem with destroying the planet and us along with it. So I greatly appreciate this business for helping me to understand why do I hear this love word thrown around so much in these um, so-called families where there's always, conflict, a lot of cursing, a lot of harm happening, but then a couple of minutes, hour later, I love you. Yeah, I'm sorry, I love you. And that is just the pitiful reality of what we are dealing with. So I greatly appreciate this business for helping me to become less confused about this love word.
Irie said something else. She said, I was sitting at my desk with nothing to do in 2004 while serving in the military when I questioned what AIDS and HIV is, and that certainly began my search for less confusion. But I was always, well, but I always knew something was wrong.
And I think that is in a lot of our minds somewhere, that something's up, something is wrong here. And due to whatever reason, fear, confusion, a combination of the two, when we have that inkling of something's wrong, few of us attempt to find out what it is. Because I joined this business when I was on my own path to figure out the trauma that Black people face. Where is this trauma coming from, and how can I end it? How can I help Black people to not experience so much trauma? And then through me having the will to want to deal with the trauma that we face, the Creator led me to the path of the truth, the path of you are in the system of white supremacy. Your existence is going to be very, very traumatic until you exist in peace, justice, a planet that love is allowed to exist. Because right now, none of these aspects, none of these concepts exist. We are trying to will them and act them into existence. So I think that may be common. We understand things are wrong, but due to the apathy placed in our minds via the system, we just, oh well, just another nigga dead, just another baby thrown away. And that is what we are saying directly or indirectly when we choose to not follow up with that. What's wrong with, what can I do about it? And how can I learn about what is wrong here? When we fail to, and I also appreciate the code for making me very just observational, because I used to be very, very just oblivious, super oblivious. People could be, conspiring to use me for their benefit, and I was none the wiser. I just thought I had all these friends who wanted me around because I was a cool guy. But no, they I was being used because I didn't observe. I didn't question things. And when you are a person who observes and studies the things happening around you, you will pick up on a lot of things, and you will perhaps even question those things. But if you don't know that you should be doing these things, then you will be preyed preyed upon. So this business is a huge form of protection from incorrectness and from malice that is certainly going to come our way. So I appreciate the code for giving me that soldier mentality of pay attention. You're in a war. Act like it. You have no reason trying to have fun on the battle zone. But soldiers also enjoy and should find time to have some leisure time. That leisure time doesn't have to always involve consuming alcohol, consuming other drugs. That leisure time shouldn't have to involve you going to a place with a bunch of other victims and jumping up and down, listening to noise. That leisure time could be, hey, learning a instrument, or doing some doing anything, but understanding that, hey, I'm still in a war. I still have a duty, a cosmic duty to solve, to add to that effective number of united independent victims who will do what they can do to solve this problem.
Yeah, I would agree with that. A lot of what I've seen that is known as racism, white supremacy, a major function of that is wasting non-white people's time. Um, whether that's not to offend any victims, but whether that's waiting on Jesus or the lottery, um, or or what I'll say, and not to eat, because those two statements, I don't want to put that like I'm blaming victims. I'm saying this is what has been presented to us as being problem solvers, whether it's economics or religion. But what I want to say is that racism, white supremacy, as you say so eloquently, is a business and it's a science. And those two concepts um, is, in my opinion, two things that keep us being able to even question things and or use logic to even solve the problem. And then so much of what we are told is that even when victims have spoken up about racism, white supremacy, um, the problem's always presented that it can't be solved. You look at the psychological studies, it's shown that when you present a problem, well, I'll just say it so I'll be accurate and clear. There were several experiments that were shown when people, there were two different groups, control group and the other group, when they're told that this problem cannot be solved, one group is told that, the other group is told that there could be a solution. The group that was told there could be a solution, they scored higher and they actually solved the problem. The group that was told that the problem couldn't be solved, none of them solved the problem. This is how racism, white supremacy is most effectively used on its victims. From one, it tells you that you're not a victim. Two, it tells you that it could be human behavior. All cultures have done this. You sold yourself into slavery. All these different things that all lead to this problem cannot be solved. So right away, the part of your brain that is made to solve problems is immediately shut off. And that is one of the major ways that victims of racism have not acquired an effective number independently, because independently we think that our problems cannot be solved because that part of our brain is turned off. And this can be proven. So we have to understand that we don't have to do anything. Racism, white supremacy is a science. It is also a religion that a lot of attempted counter-racist scientists have spoken on. It is also a religion. It is a power dynamic. When you deal with power dynamics, it's like when you plug something into the wall. If it's not balanced, it's not going to work, or it's going to blow a fuse or cause a fire, which makes it a code. Mr. Fuller speaks of his entire process of thinking is a code. If things are not in a coded pattern, they do not work. Racism, white supremacy has been working. So that is a codified structure. This information, this type of thinking, this type of logical thinking is what is needed to counter this codified system of racism, white supremacy. And that's what I want to add. I'm mute out.
Thank you, Mr. Yawu, and excellent analysis, and wow. So Neely Fuller Jr. has in his word guide, it's actually the last word in his word guide: zeroism, zeroistic behavior, racial. Use these terms to apply to things said or done or not said or done that directly or indirectly have the effect of not helping to promote the replacement of the system of white supremacy, racism, with the system of justice and correctness, balance between all people, all creatures, all things, etc., in all areas of activity, existence, and non existence. And that is very common. I talk to victims and I mention racism, and the zeroistic behavior comes out almost immediately. We can't, that's never going anywhere. Racism is never going anywhere. We can't end racism, and that is a tragically cowardly phenomenon that has been implanted in us for thousands of years, and it truly shows, unfortunately, how primitive we still are for thinking that we can't solve our problems and the race problem. I think I definitely appreciate the Neely Fuller Jr. and this business for producing a word that reflects and explains what we're dealing with when we hear we can't end racism, we can't stop the white supremacists. Zeroistic behavior, zeroistic thinking, which is unfortunately very, 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 very rampant amongst us. Go ahead. Oh, okay, I thought you were gonna. Probably the last thing I have to say about the constructive value of counter racism is it has taught me to value my time and energy. And I hope this isn't name calling, but I feel like in the past I was surrounded by energy parasites, people who just wasted a lot of my time coming to me with problems. They want to talk about their problems, and I would give them advice on their problems, but they would very rarely follow up with that advice. And I used to waste a lot of time just doing stupid stuff, playing video games an excessive amount, watching entertainment an excessive amount, and using my energy to do a lot of silly stuff, consuming all sorts of incorrect concoctions and substances um, total, total waste of time and the indication that I did not value my time at all. And racists, they certainly, certainly value their time and their energy, which is why they have conquered us and they use us to do things that they don't want to do. The whole chattel slavery was a huge example of, hey, they value their time so much they're gonna go ahead and this plantation is gonna get done. That cotton's gonna get picked, while at the same time they're still going out and conquering more people and coming up with more ways to keep us dominated forever. So I now value my time and energy and I'm very cognizant about who I am interacting with and how much time I'm going to spend with that person and how much energy I'm going to allow that I'm going to expend with or on that person. And if we just simply done like an effective number of us begin to attempt to do these things, we will tremendously united independently um, evolve to a people who we should be wanting and willing to become, people who are serious about serious things and people who are dedicated to a code of producing justice, as we have hopefully demonstrated that racist men and racist women are very dedicated to keeping the system going forever. And actually, this is the final thing I have to affirm counter racism. I mean, I have to affirm the business of counter racism on is that the whole really it's really pitiful that we have this in our minds so much that, but the incorrect thought that everyone can be racist, that is incorrect. And this is another thing I hear very often, that like we have racists of all races, and that is totally incorrect. White people organized themselves behind a race and they made us into races. We are not members of a race. The only race is the white race. And I thank the code so much for me having that understanding that there's only one nation, the white nation. Only one place worth mentioning on this planet is the system of white supremacy. That's the only real location. When you look at a map and you see California, you see Texas, you see Nevada, those are just places on the map. The same thing is happening in all of those areas. White people are in charge, and non white people are powerless and confused. So I greatly appreciate the code for me understanding that and not focusing so much on, well, Nevada has less racism, or, lots of, or Texas has a lot of racism. What? That is such incorrect thinking and just ill logic, demonstrating that person's mind is sick and full of a bunch of deception that they are not attempting to remove. And it's certainly not their fault, but they should, and we should definitely want to improve ourselves and clear up the things that we have been lied about to for so long. So only one place that we exist in, and that is this system of white supremacy. We cannot move to another place and expect things to get better. The only way things are going to get better is we replace the system of white supremacy with a system of justice. And that's probably another awesome thing I love about the code. I'm not going to say love, I greatly appreciate about the code is that giving me the concept of justice, because I never really cared about justice, because I'm existing in a place where white supremacists say justice is putting a person in prison. That's justice. We hope the family gets justice, and so that person who harmed that person is now in prison. So that's justice? No. Justice is peace, love, no one, nothing being harmed and mistreated. And I've come to the conclusion that every person should be willing to have that reality. No one being harmed, nothing being harmed, everyone receiving help. And if you are not willing to help to do that, then I truly question why even exist. Why even exist if you do not want peace, you do not want love, do not want justice? Should a person who is unwilling to do that, I really question should they exist, because that is insane to me to want to keep things going as they are, to keep the status quo as it is. So, yeah, this business, it tells us that we have intelligent fear. We understand that any moment the racist could drone me, explode me, have someone come blow my brains out, or poison me, or just eliminate me in due haste. But this business, I feel like, also has made me very courageous and telling the truth, because no one should be afraid to tell the truth, and no one should be harmed for telling the truth. But we are in a system of white supremacy that's going to happen until we solve this problem. Would anyone else like to share?
Yes, sir. Thank you. Um, just really quick, counter racism, counter racist logic has taught me um, that independence. A lot of victims are taught that we can solve our problems through unity. Um, Mr. Fuller says that unite to do what? Ask the question. Unite and to do what? That has not been effective to end the system of racism and white supremacy. So just the idea of independence and then solving problems. So I've heard a lot of victims say, what can we do? That's the question. So I would like to propose these are things that victims of racism can do independently in the privacy of your home for free that will change your thoughts, speech, and action in simple terms. This is not hard. The 10 things you can do to counter the system of racism and white supremacy as far as solving problems is stop snitching, stop name calling, stop cursing, stop gossiping, stop being discourteous, stop stealing, stop robbing, stop fighting, stop killing, and stop squabbling. Dr. France Welsing has added 6 more addendums to that. One of them is stop selling drugs, stop throwing down trash. Um, I cannot quote her directly on the other ones. I apologize about that. I would like to add another one. I found this to be highly effective, and this is what led me to counter racist logic. And I'll end there is stop watching television. Thank you for your time. Stop there.
Yeah, another aspect that I greatly enjoy about this business is that the rare times I'm actually watching like a TV show or a movie, which is just very, very rare these days, and I'm able to decode. I'm able to see the messages, the symbols, the racist messages, and the racist code that are being communicated to myself and to the other people who are watching this. I'm able to see how racists communicate with each other through TV, through movies, and how they maintain the system by producing hundreds of thousands of films, But the films do the same thing. They all do the same thing. They teach our minds that everything's this is how things should be. Very few people walk out of watching a movie or a TV show of thinking about how to solve problems or how to produce peace. Very few movies are gonna, I would say zero movies are gonna tell you to produce peace, justice, guarantee no one is being mistreated, and then people who need help the most receive help and receive constructive help at that. Very few movies are gonna instill that into your psyche consciously or subconsciously. But these movies will teach you to keep doing what you're doing. You do not have to change. You do not have to evolve. You do not have to study. You do not have to ask questions. Very few movies are gonna tell you to hey, stop harming people, stop cursing, stop being deceptive, stop gossiping. Very few movies are gonna instill that into you. So that's why it's very, very dangerous for a confused victim, confused non-white person to just be amongst the idiot box for so long. And they call it the idiot box for a reason, I imagine, because it really makes the mind extra mushy, extra confused. You know, you will turn on the television, you will see a bunch of people acting wacky, and guess what? You're acting wacky, emulating the characters you see in the fantasy realm of television. That happened to me when I was young. I watched Fight Club, watched American Psycho, Natural Born Killers, and these people became my heroes, my role models. I wanted to be like Tyler Durden. I wanted to, wanted to emulate these white supremacists. So I greatly appreciate the code in this business and Dr. Francis Chris Wilson, Bobby Wright, Dr. Amundsen Wilson, and every single soldier that has fought on this battlefield and died on this battlefield just so we can have the information we need to solve the problem. We have all the information is already here. We just need an effective number of us not coming together, at all, but independently we have the same goal, just like white people independently have the same goal to keep the system going. We independently have the same goal to solve and stop them and to put an end to this system of white supremacies. There's more of us than there will ever be of them. It just takes an effective number of us to do what needs doing, which is using the truth, using logic to get this system out of here. Or the white people, the racist ones, at least will attempt to kill us all, and we are fine with either choice. Produce justice or kill us all. That is the mentality as soldiers, as victims of racism, as non-white people, we need to instill in our minds, because nothing is worse than being subjected to the system. Death is not something to be feared. Why fear something that's going to happen? The moment you are born, death is on your docket. It's going to happen. So do not fear it. You should fear dying incorrectly because we're in a system of white supremacy. Dying because you have color in your skin. That is very lame. And we should be motivated to eliminate this reality ASAP. And it can be done possibly overnight if enough of us do what needs doing. So my final thing, this business has given me a solution to the problem, how to solve the problem, and what I can do to end the problem. I say swear like a pirate. It's a curse. Like I've been cursing longer than I've been reading books. So if I can stop doing it, if I can stop name calling, if I can stop, harming non-white people and attempting to be courteous, then I suspect many of us also can do the same thing. Before I wrap up, I'm gonna ask if anyone else has anything else to contribute to the discussion.
Can I be heard?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Mr. Thursday has read off the 10 stops for what Dr. Wilson has added. Now that you have stopped doing those things, uh, there are 4 things that you should be doing with your time and energy. This is on page 60 of the United Independent Compensatory Code System Concept of 2016 edition. First one, produce, build, repair,
Wait, 1 second,
improve,
Ms. Action.
clean.
1 second, because you
Mhm.
are a bit hard to hear. Is it possible to
Okay.
get closer to your mic?
Can-
Or
Is that better?
yes.
Okay. All right. I'm going to repeat what I just said. Page 60 of the code book, 2016 edition. Produce, build, repair, improve, clean things with constructive value. Use these things for constructive purposes. 2, study, write, question, exchange views with others about all aspects of how to eliminate racism, white supremacy, and produce justice in all 9 areas of activity. 3, eat and sleep correctly. I think most everyone has said this on the panel, and only as necessary. So eat and sleep correctly, only as necessary, and limit sexual intercourse to 2 times per week, using minimal time and energy and resources to do so. And 4 questions you should always ask yourself and others. What do you want to do? Why do you want to do it? How do you plan to do it? And what do you expect the constructive result to be? Final thought. Yes, it's scary to be by yourself, but when you think about it, you've always been by yourself. We have never been united under the system. So if you can get yourself strong by stopping those 10 stops and doing the 4 constructive activities and asking questions in a manner that solves a problem constructively, you will be a stronger individual mentally, physically, emotionally. And then together, we're doing things independently, but together, that is how we together solve the problem. You're going to do it independently. But if y'all are all, if we have the effective number of people doing things constructively, that is the united part of the United Independent Code.
Excellent. And that definitely reminds me of how I got to where I am right now. The code teaches us to learn things of constructive value, and because I've been in this business, the creator has just guided me and assisted me with figuring out what am I going to be doing on this planet. And many of non-white people, myself especially included, we do not know a lot of things that we probably should know. So I did a lot of thinking of what sort of plantation I want to be on. And when I say plantation, I mean career, job, the thing I am doing to earn money. Because in this system, the racists say you must have money to be somewhat comfortable, to exist without suffering and squalor and total total misery. So I've decided I want a plantation position that allows me to use my mind and my hands. I want to know how to do things of constructive value. So I joined a business where I'm learning a number of skills, such as using a forklift, using a number of tools that involve burning and laying down pipes, learning how to use rope, the very tool that was used to kill many and many of my ancestors and still being used to this day to kill many people who are also classified as not white, especially those of us classified as black. So I have joined a business where I'm going to become a handy person. I'm going to understand tools. I'm going to understand how tools work. I'm going to understand how to use these tools to solve some problems for sure. And that gives me huge value. Neely Fuller always talks about, a time where in this system where if you don't know how to do things, then there's going to be not many places for you. And I will say myself that I suspect he may be very, very correct. There will be a time where if you don't know how to do things of constructive value, then you may be two places for you: greater confinement, what we know as prison, or the dirt, the grave. So, highly, highly thankful for joining this business. I have never been happier. I have never been existing with this minimum amount of stress. I have never been this understanding of what I'm doing here. Why am I on this planet? Why was I born? It's definitely not to be a slave forever. It's definitely not to be mistreated. I'm here to help to end the system of white supremacy and replace it with a system of justice. And I would beg everyone to think about attempting to do the same. This problem seems very, 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 very bad, and it is. But the solutions to it, it's very, very simple if you ask me. Do what needs doing and gather united independently around the mentality of we are going to solve this problem, or you white supremacists are going to have to kill all of us, because no more George Floyd, no more Breonna Taylor, Tamir Rice's, no more non-white people existing in squalor on and the same. We exist in such squalor, but we exist where all the resources are that keeps the system going. So it's totally, totally incorrect what's occurring here. So we will produce justice. I don't think the creator will allow them to kill us all. And that's all I have to say. It's been a very, very awesome discussion. I thank you all for sharing and contributing your excellent analysis and sharing your thoughts here. Okay, so we're gonna close out. Use this silence to think about what you just heard while I put our ending clip up. And especially thanks everyone who have tuned in and have given us a lesson. Super, super thanks to everyone who has supported me financially, have sent me some nickels to do what I need to do to complete my goals and to exist with a dwelling above my head. Many, many thanks to Rate This Record, Helen B, CRWS Collective, and our Patreons. We do have a Patreon. Please consider becoming one of a member of that. But especially share this information. Share this information if you deem it to be of constructive value. With that being said, I am going to play our final clip, our outro, and please maintain out there, attempt counter racist science, counter racist business, and we shall solve this problem. Go to producejustice.com. Don't just buy the book, but study it as well.
You are alive.
No. I exist.